Hi, I'm Dr. Gemma, and welcome back to Cognitive, the Knitting Psychology podcast. Cheerfully and somewhat irregularly in business since 2008. Segments today may include what's on my hooks, needles, and spindles, a strategy, something I really like, put a lid on it, oh shoot, and blather. So sit back, put your feet up, pick up your knitting, crocheting, spinning, weaving, or dyeing, or any other yarny thing you're doing, and get ready to enjoy. Well, hello there. I'm Dr. Gemma, and this is episode 151 of the Cognitive Podcast, which I can only call mounting excitement after the day I've had today, and the weekend I've had too, I guess, when I put it that way. It's been a very funny and strange time. At the top of the show notes, for example, I took a picture outside my local Walgreens pharmacy. And if you read that bottom paragraph and think for a second, you'll get why I posted it. It's a bit of a joke, but it's been sort of that kind of week where things have been just a little off-kilter and wonderful and funny all at the same time, because I'm beginning to realize by the time you hear this, it will be less than 1 month until CFR 2023, and that is just great. The feeling of finally, I've waited for this so long, and so I've been working on that a lot this week, and you're going to hear a lot of that. Meanwhile, your comments are always welcome, either on the show notes at cognitivepodcast.blogspot.com or on our group on Ravelry. And I enjoy the comments. We've had a few running discussions on various things lately, and I've been enjoying them a heck of a lot. On my social media, for those who do follow it, I have been using the hashtag CFR23. I think somebody hacked it this week, because suddenly there were many, many weird and unrelated things on it, whereas last week or 2 weeks ago when I came up with it, nobody was using it. But anyway, I'm using that for the hashtag, and we'll see how that goes. In the warm thanks department, therefore, I want to thank everybody who is supporting CFR 2023. The comments have been helpful. The remarks on the info thread on Ravelry have been especially helpful. And well, I'm just starting to get really, really excited, aren't I? Yes, I am. We do still have room for 6 people. 6 people? 7 people, I think, actually. And that's okay, but I don't know if we're actually going to get them. This is a very weird thing to be saying about a cognitive fiber retreat. We've always had overflow before, and we did this year, but a lot of people just vanished. And we'll build the momentum. We'll see how it goes. People are already talking about coming next year, and that makes me feel more wonderful than I can tell you. We've had also some more good news. We know that, of course, Dizzy Blonde did a colorway for us, and Laser Sheep says they're doing a colorway for us. I am crossing my fingers that it has a lot of speckles. And then today, Kalukale Oink Pigments confirmed that they are going to make us a special show colorway. Please go over to Oink Pigments, anywhere you can find them on social media or Ravelry, and tell them how much you want to see a CFR colorway. I have a feeling these creatives who design yarn colors and dye and all that making a show special colorway is not the challenge for them that it would be for someone like me, but it excites the living heck out of me. So I am very, very excited to get that piece of news. Meanwhile, the mini skein swap, I realized because of something that happened yesterday at the Santa Clarita Valley craft swap, that we really don't have a lot of crochet patterns for our mini skein swap. And so I went looking for those, and you will see in the show notes there is a link. Post number 52 on the info thread on Ravelry. There is a list I put there of mini skein patterns designed specifically for crochet. So go over there and have at it. Meanwhile, some sad soul who shall remain nameless said something about, will any of the vendors be bringing needle point guards or needle stoppers, whatever you want to call them, for the ends of our knitting needles? Well, yeah, that's an interesting question, isn't it? Yeah, that's an interesting question. Well, look at that picture in the show notes. How did that get there? I wonder what it means. Meanwhile, I'm trying so hard not to blow secrets here. It's not easy, guys. Okay, meanwhile, the goodie bags themselves, I have been going through incredible guilt because I couldn't come up with a logo for CFR 23, and I did not want to use our old logo because I'm much older and I don't like it as much as I used to. Let's put it that way. And of course, Minerva, who always gets the last word around here, don't you? Yes. She is stretched out on my windowsill, hoping birds will show up that she can attack through the glass and somehow miraculously get. At any rate, Minerva reminded me that there's a really readily available logo in the form of, a really good-looking black cat. So I did finally just sit down and screw my courage to the sticking point and tried to remember the companies I used before to get bags and mugs and whatnot, water bottles. And so now we have goodie bags, and they are due to arrive about the 20th or 21st of October. You will see them if you go into my social media. I don't know, did I put them in the show notes? I haven't put them in the show notes. I do believe I shall put it in the show notes. Yes, I shall, because that's really Minerva's last word right there. Minerva kind of owns the goodie bags this year. And that's the way it should be. Meanwhile, what is on my hooks and needles? Well, I haven't finished anything because I got completely sucked in by the color work on the Superstition sweater. So, I finished it. I got past the whole collar, and now I'm just working my way down the body using a solid dark charcoal gray from a company that, as far as I'm concerned, is non-existent these days. But it was old yarn in the stash, and I do love it. It used to be such high quality. So I'm not going to give the name because really you can't buy it anyway. But I'm working my way down this dark charcoal gray. It's a very, very handsome sweater. If you go into the show notes, you can see a lovely picture of the full collar. And it's 4 Peries that surround a beautiful row of cats who are jumping on their toes with their backs arched and their tails straight up. This is, of course, a pattern in the fall collection available on Ravelry by Megan Regan, alias Bad Wolf Girl Knits. I just love her work, and this is no exception. The picture doesn't do it justice. It's great. It is such a pretty sweater. So I'm working my way down the body on that, which is really embarrassing because I could finish the Llama Love sweater easily, and yet I don't because I need to work my way down the sleeves and address the issue of not having enough of the beautiful main color yarn to do the cuffs. And I will work on it. I'm not worried about it at all. I just love that sweater. But I need to get back to work on it and finish it because it's so close to finish. It's seriously a long weekend away. Maybe over Thanksgiving weekend, if nothing else. Because I'm really happy to say that I do now have Thanksgiving Friday off with pay. And I'm very, very pleased about that. So meanwhile, I haven't really given any love to the BB-8 socks or the Pennsylvania Dutch embroidery because I'm just working my way down the Superstition sweater's body. I just want to get to the bottom of the body before I turn my attention, I think, back to the Llama Love. I know I will do my second sock of the Laser Sheep BB-8 socks for the simple reason I'm already past the ribbing at the top of the leg. I'm just on stockinette. I carry socks everywhere I go, and if I have a free minute, I knit socks. But when I'm at home, I love, love, love knitting on worsted weight and bulky weight yarn. I really do. I just get such a bang out of how fast it goes. I'm also really excited because I'm making basically a dark gray sweater. And I never thought I'd knit in dark colors, and I'm so loving it, so loving it. Meanwhile, Dizzy Blondes, no, I'm not doing anything there. I am looking through my wheels and trying to decide which one. I'm going to take one of Maurice's 3D printed wheels to CFR 23. Probably it will be one of the nanos I have because someone expressed interest. I have an electric eel wheel 6, and it's loaded and I could finish that project, but no. because I really, really want to spin all this Minerva fur that I've got, which means I have to brush it out as well. At any rate, that's all that's happening in Dizzy Blondes, which is not a whole heck of a lot. So let's get on to the strategy. I want to talk a little bit more about ABC, about the belief component. And I think the reason I got set off to talk about ABC, that is action leads to belief, leads to choice, last week is something one of our listeners said, tiny shiny things about micro breaks and chronic pain. But this week, as I was pondering it, another old friend posted this thing on Facebook about how she's so sick of this self-improvement regimen that you've got to just take hold of yourself and you're not allowed to have pain, and that's so unsupportive, and all these people need is people to listen to them as they talk about their pain. Now, there is a certain truth to that. Let me tell you, everybody needs some empathy every now and then. That is absolutely true. And I think Cogb therapy gets lashed a lot by people saying, I don't want to do that because it means you don't have to listen to me talk about my pain, and you're telling me to get over my pain, but I can't get over my pain. Okay, and counter to that, the people who manage chronic pain successfully, in my experience universally, are using cognitive behavioral strategies. So where is the middle ground? Well, there's more middle ground than you would think here. First of all, in Cogb, we have Dr. Marsha Linehan, who came along and said, you know, guys, this is really beautiful, but you're kind of forgetting the compassion element. Now, I've known the guys who developed Cogb, and believe me, they were very compassionate people. But I think it's easy when you're teaching this, if you get trainees who are not as compassionate, I do think it's easy for this to go into, why don't you just get over it? Take charge of your own thinking and get over it. Stop asking the rest of us to feel sorry for you. I think you do get that from some therapists. I've had them as therapists when I went as a patient, and I dumped them as therapists. So what is supposed to happen here, and why did Dr. Linehan feel she had to even say this? Well, because they're out there. Look, there's bad therapists, just like there's bad doctors, bad lawyers, bad judges, bad drivers, bad seamstresses. Okay, there's always going to be good and bad in any profession. I do feel as one of the good therapists that I constantly get beaten with the stick of my bad colleagues, but we live with it. So what's really going on here? Well, you have to think about why you're going to therapy. Okay, therapy is not about staying the same. It is always about change. So I do think there's a risk that to people who are not looking for change, that a Cogb therapist will sound this way, will sound cold-hearted. Now, when I say people are looking for change, well, people say, well, I have chronic pain and I just want to live with it successfully. Yes, but that's change. You're saying you don't right now. And so the therapy there isn't going to be just get over it. It's going to be more around radical acceptance. You have to come to grips that this is your reality now, and it won't be changing. And you have to come to grips with how that is going to affect you, how other people are going to relate to you, how you relate back. I think one of the best things that ever happened to me as a clinician, since I am cross-eyed, yes, I am. If you ever meet me in person, please feel free to ask me for a demo. Although, unfortunately, I do it a lot when I don't mean to. And I had this wonderful moment where I was a fairly new clinician, way back when I was, like 40. And I had these two little girls, and they were both cognitively disabled, what we used to call mentally retarded. And in the middle of the session, it was late in the afternoon, I was very tired, and my eye crossed, as it will when I'm tired. So one kid goes, "Wow, lady, your eye is crazy." And the other kid goes, "Ew, it is. You look like a freak." And I had an hour of this times 2. And I had never, up to that point, I just really had not come to grips with the fact that people see this in me. It's really funny. I mean, I encountered it when I dated my husband. But I think those two little girls really taught me that if I'm going to work with people who have mental health issues, this thing I've been gliding over for my 40 years was now going to be more front and center, because many of my patients would not have the self-control to avoid commenting on it, let alone to be polite about it. And I just felt so beaten up at the end of that hour. And I didn't tell anybody because I was mortified. And I went home and I thought about it, and I began to think about all the times in my life, and believe me, there have been a lot of them, where my being cross-eyed was brought to my attention forcibly by other people or by things I could not do. Because part of the difficulty with being cross-eyed is it messes up your depth perception. So I have very strange experiences in depth perception because I don't see the world apparently the way the rest of you do. Now, I would love to tell you all about that, except I can't because I've never seen the world in 3 dimensions, apparently. So every now and then, something small goes wrong because I'm not seeing the world in 3D. When I was a kid, I was always walking into things with the right edge of my body. So I can remember being about 7 years old, and I had bruises on the right side of my body from the top of my forehead down to my knees because I was always walking into those edges. And I learned to sort of swerve a lot. Apparently, I learned other things like using shadows to give me a hint of where things are located. Because if you don't have depth perception, you always think things are located a little more to one side than they always are. So I have to move everything slightly to the left so that I don't hit it. If I see a wall coming up on my right side, I have to move me to the left or I'm going to hit it. Now, it's okay on my left side because the things over there, I'm seeing them as more to the left than they actually are. And it's very interesting when I shoot archery. Now, a gun, you get around it because of the way the sights are set up. That the double, I don't know what they call it, the double point sight, I guess I would say, on a rifle makes you line things up and it accommodates depth problems. On a bow, you got something else going on. I'm a very good shot with a bow because there was a point in my life where I just gritted my teeth. I was about 11 years old. My best friend wanted us both to shoot archery. So I gritted my teeth and I accommodated. Anyway, so I go on with this thing with the crossed eyes forever. One day I'm working with a workers' comp practice and the patient walks in and he's lost a foot to a machine. And he walks in and he sticks his wooden foot up on my desk. Still attached to his leg, I'm happy to say. And he says, "I hate you and I hate everybody because I'm tired of being a freak." And I leaned across the table and suddenly I understood the value of having crossed eyes. And I said, "Yeah? You think you feel bad for yourself? How about me?" And he said, "What do you mean?" And I said, "Just look at my face." And he looks at me and goes, he got it. He goes, "Wow, your one eye it's not pointing quite right." I said, "Yeah, I'm cross-eyed." So I said, "Let me ask you something. How old were you when you lost your foot?" He said, "I was 22. I said, "Well, I lost my eye in a birth accident." So I said, "I've been cross-eyed since birth. How do you think that's been?" And he looks at me and he sits back and he takes his foot off my desk and he goes, "I like you and I can work with you." And we had tremendously successful therapy. Now, all I can say is it was grist for my mill, that finally, after 40 years, I figured out that my problem could work for me. But here's what you learn. You can't compare it. I can't say that his problem was less bad than mine. I mean, it's really hard to even think that way. How do you compare a crossed eye and losing a foot in a machine? I can't even think. But what I could say was something he could understand, that you can learn to live this way. You can learn to recognize that people will see you every day and treat you as though you're different. And you can learn to move with that. And you can make progress, okay? Every now and then, I need some empathy about my crossed eye. I'm laughing about it because I'm not too much anymore. So let me tell you what it was like when I was dating my husband. And I think he was the first guy who ever had the guts to point it out to me. We were leaning in for a kiss, and he said in a soft, romantic voice, "And I love how when I kiss you, your eyes get that funny cross-eyed look." Oh, man, there was not much kissing for a while after that one. But again, you can't compare that because there's There's just no way to understand the difficulty in walking versus the difficulty in playing pool or shooting an arrow. Like, you can't compare these things. But there is a moment where you say, I'm going to live with this and I have to deal with this. And that's what therapy is for. And those two little girls did therapy on me the day they made me realize that I could stop pretending that people don't notice my wackadoodle left eye. And this is the part, by the way, where when I'm talking to a colleague and I point this out, they always say, oh, I never really noticed it. You're like, what a sweet liar you are. Okay, but the reality is, I went to therapy. The reality is, I had to pass through shame and horror and revulsion and anger and everything else. I had to stop kidding myself that nobody was noticing. People were noticing. Now, if I went to therapy and said, how do I live with my crossed eye? I'm not expecting the therapist to sit there and say, oh, that's terrible. How do you feel about that? I would expect the therapist instead to say, how do you want people to respond? What do you think you can do about that? How can you help people respond because yours is not a common problem? And yes, we all want people to be mature and to not stare at our difference. We all want that, but people are going to stare at it. And there's a really simple reason. Mammals, warm-blooded animals, always look at things that are different because we're animals first. And we begin to evaluate any difference in terms of, is this going to hurt me? And when we're young and we're less well trained by our parents who teach us manners, we will tend to stare at things more because we're trying to, in our head, make them right. We're trying to identify, why is this different? Does it have to be this way? Is the person who is different doing this intentionally? Is this in some way threatening to me? What would it look like if it was normal? This is a normal mammalian animal response. So you want to stare at my crossed eyes. Those of you coming to CFR 23, feel free, man. I'm so over this. But that's what I'm telling you, that I needed a form of reality testing, a form of cognitive behavioral therapy to move past it. So if you come to me as a clinician and you tell me about your chronic pain or your chronic illness, I am going to commiserate. I am going to say, I am so sorry. That's got to be hard for you. And I am going to give you room to talk about it. In Cog B, we talk about everything. But we talk about it with a direction of how are we going to live with this to be comfortable. So please stop throwing out the baby with the bathwater here. You have to change your beliefs to suit your situation. And the more realistic your beliefs are about your situation, the better you're going to make your choices about how to respond to the situation. And as I said last week, that doesn't mean you're going to be real happy about the situation, but you are going to be able to work on a better response. You don't come to therapy to force other people to do something, including to force them to grow compassion. Unfortunately, no matter how good your therapist is, I promise you, we don't have that skill. We can only work with you because you came to us. And it is very common in therapy to have patients come to you wanting you to help them force another person to change. And we all want that. I mean, we have unhappy marriages, right? We go to an individual therapist, say, my husband's a jerk. And the therapist is going to say, well, you either go to couples therapy and you work that out with him with a neutral arbitrator in the form of the therapist, or you and I talk about, can you change your behaviors in any way to manage the fact that your husband behaves this way? And yes, sometimes when we change our behaviors, other people will change in response to that. I notice it in my own marriage when I realized with my husband, he doesn't change unless he sees the change in me. With him, you have to lead from the front. He won't follow your suggestion very often. Mostly, he needs to see you practicing it. I can tell you in his life where this comes from, and it doesn't matter. What matters is when I began to make clear that I was doing the things I was asking him to do, he changed outrageously. We suddenly had a great marriage. He just needed a sense that I was in it like he was. I wasn't just giving commands from the sidelines. So our change will motivate other change. And you hear my belief there. I believe that I can sometimes change people for the better by the changing in myself, by changing my own actions, and that is a belief you're hearing me state. So if you come to therapy because you have a chronic problem, the therapist should be compassionate. Thank you, Dr. Linehan. But please be real. You don't come to therapy so you can finally complain about your problems. That's really not what therapy is. Therapy is about change. But don't worry. Even in Cog B, I'm here to tell you, believe me, you are going to tell me all about your problem. And I am going to be compassionate. I am going to say that is really, really hard. And then I'm going to say, but you came here to change. What do you want to do about it? How can we make your experience of this better? Oh, let's see. Fluffy books. Well, The King's Affection on Netflix again. Yes, last week I told you not much there. Wrong. The King's Affection, the first 10 episodes are clearly a season unto themselves. They're very sweet. As you get to the end, there's a lot of drippy people staring into each other's eyes in a soppy way. And that goes on in the next 10 episodes after that, episodes 11 to 20. However, around about episode 12 or 13, things get really tense. And they reach the inevitable endpoint. How can this ruse, this pretense that the protagonist is carrying on, how can this last? And suddenly, let me tell you, it is a political suspense thriller. Those last 5 hours had me on the edge of my seat, and the last episode is immensely satisfying. So I am going to recommend The King's Affection on Netflix, but you got to get through about 12 hours of it to really reach what I would think of as the payoff. Yes, it's romantic. Yes, it's kind of soppy, but it's a lot of fun. It's very interesting. There is gore. In between all the soppy scenes, there are some really gory moments, particularly in the early episodes. What I really like about it was I thought they were going to sell out the female lead. They were going to finally make her just kind of collapse or be rescued. No. One of the themes is that it takes guts of steel to survive in this court. And she has them. And at one point she tells her younger half-brother that when he goes to court, he can't cry. And he begs her forgiveness later. He thinks she's a he, by the way. But he begs her forgiveness, saying, I wasn't able to do it. And that's a bad sign for him, as you can imagine. But at the end of it, she puts everything on the line. She doesn't ask anything of anyone else that she is not willing to give. And so the very final scene where she is judged is amazing because it's absolutely real. Meanwhile, in Bookland, I continue to read the second of the Bridgerton Smith series, or Smythe-Smith series. I think it's called A Night Like This, and I'm enjoying it immensely. But I can't say enough. I really like Julia Quinn's Bridgerton series. They're just enjoyable. They're just fun. Something I really like, okay, I'm going to admit it, Amazon Prime is having a Prime Day, days on October 10th to 11th. I am massively enjoying the overkill. Everybody and their cousin is trying to give me advice as to what great things are on sale. Even Rolling Stone, for heaven's sake, somehow got on my Instagram feed. And you know what? I just love it. Am I buying anything on Prime Day? Not that I know of, but I have a huge wish list on Amazon, and I will look to see if any of them go on any special sale. Because I just believe when you see something that's good, stick it on your wish list or stick it in your cart and then move it for later. But just wait, because if any of it goes on sale on those Prime days, well, that's going to work in your favor. So I hate to admit it because, Amazon Prime, those Prime days, you can get some amazing stuff. Fortunately, I don't need a new garage shelter for my car, nor do I need a cabin in the backyard, but believe me, it's a temptation. That's what keeps popping up on my list. I just bought the goodie bags, the actual bags, for Cognitive, for CFR 2023, as I told you. Now I'm getting all these ads for stickers and buttons, but nothing from Amazon so far. Put a lid on it. Well, the tea tastings. Last week I mentioned how much I love making my own chai. And I thought, what's the matter with me? Because I didn't give you the recipe. So this week I'm giving you the recipe for chai masala. Now the original recipe I have is from Tu Slevers, who was one of the first keto writers, although she does non-keto stuff as well, on social media. And this is a really good solid recipe. She herself is Indian, and so I think I can take this as pretty seriously, accurate. Now she says put the ingredients in a heat-proof container and put it in your Instant Pot, and below it, put it on a trivet in your Instant Pot, put 2 cups of water in the Instant Pot, meanwhile underneath it. Yeah, I don't do any of that. I just put all the ingredients except for those 2 cups of water that are just to keep the Instant Pot balanced. I don't put the trivet in, I don't put the 2 cups of water in, I just put all the ingredients into my Instant Pot. Okay, but the appropriate recipe is there in the show notes, and I highly recommend it. If you've never made your own chai masala, you really need to try it sometime. You can also do it, by the way, in a saucepan. You can just boil everything, add a lot more water because you're going to boil off some of the water. So, they're saying 1.5 cups of water, and I think it's half cup of cream. I can't see it from here. 1.5 cups of water, a half cup of milk. I use heavy cream, and I add extra water, and I let it boil off in steam at any rate. I'm doing this keto, so I don't do milk. I don't even do whole milk. I do heavy cream with a little water added in to thin it. However you do this, on a really cold winter night, when you can't get warm, this is what you want to make. And yes, you definitely add full fat milk, or in my case, cream to this after you make it. You thin it out and cool it down with a little more of that. It is just so good. It's got such strength and body to it. This next to regular black tea is like drinking Mexican hot chocolate next to American oversugared spiceless hot chocolate. It's that same kind of difference. This gives a real depth and heartiness to your tea. You also see a picture of a cup of tea, hot tea, in my favorite cup there, next to one of my pieces of the pumpkin spice cake that I made last week. And as you can see, I have done the British thing. I've coated it in liquid cream, not whipped cream. I just wanted to put that there because there is nothing better than hot tea and pumpkin spice cake on a cool night, especially if you throw heavy cream over the pumpkin spice cake. Having said that, we are in a heat wave right now, the kind of second summer that you get in North America after you get that first cold snap. And the temperatures have been going up into the high 80s and low 90s this week. So I am just waiting for the summer to end again so that we can get another cold snap and I can start wearing all my woolies and drinking chai masala and making more pumpkin spice cake. So, on to the blather. Not much happening on the pup date and on the watercolors. The hubs date, well, we are still slogging through Project G, as in garage. Oh my goodness. So the hubs. The hubs went in the garage and he made a significant discovery that I had somehow missed, and that is his belongings were closer and more in reach than my belongings. I didn't even know my belongings were still in there. I thought I had gotten rid of all my belongings the last time that I engaged 1-800-JUNK. But no. So he went through the garage to quote-unquote reorganize it. What he did was moved my stuff to the area of trash that we can get rid of. This is not as cynical as it sounds. I think he was looking at it as, well, you're saying you don't want anything in the garage so we can get rid of all this. However, you remember he found my journals. And he respected that, and they're all there. So anyway, this was really great because it made me realize I have a huge amount of junk in there that has to go. So this week, it's so weird. I am going through, yes, I found my notes from my doctoral dissertation. Boy, were they meticulously organized, color-coded. Oh gosh, it was so impressive, I thought, as I threw them in the dumpster. Because what good are they? I've got the published version sitting next to me on a shelf in this very room. So I'm going through all that. I'm finding all my old class syllabuses and readers and all that stuff. And all his old paper files from those days. I have to tell you, it's been really refreshing. So, today I got rid of 4 cartons of papers, really papers, and old class junk that we will never use again and have no reason to keep. I did find I had a whole bunch of really nice 3-ring binders, the kind that have double vinyl-lined covers and dividers and everything else. I mean, these things cost like $10 now, so I saved all of them, and I will go to why in a minute. But basically, I am still working my way through the garage. Now it is more like I cut down 3 boxes a day, because almost all the boxes are actually gone except the ones that have trash in them. And so I have 3 boxes in the car, sometimes 4, and I just load them with cardboard from the boxes I cut down every day. And then I also load them with old papers and junk, trash. And so I've been taking these out and going to regular trash cans, except the cardboard's going into recycling bins. And on Thursdays and Saturdays and Sundays, I try to get rid of at least 3 cartons of junk. And yes, it's true, I'm down to taking books to the library and donating, or just dropping books that will never be usable again into trash cans, which is kind of strange for me as a former college professor. But I thought, at least, that I had sold all my saleable books about 18 years ago. I went on a binge and went on to eBay and just started putting up boxes of books. And I would sell them for $1 a book plus postage and handling. And each box would have 2 books or so that were worthwhile, and the rest were just junk. And I had this string of used bookstores who were following me in those days and would buy anything I posted. And it went very, very well. I thought I'd gotten through all those books. Little did I know. So now I'm doing that. It's not so much books. In fact, it's very rarely books unless they're in very bad shape. It's mostly old papers and old syllabuses and old books that we had spiral bound at a print shop to sell to the class, that sort of thing. So that's where Project G is. It's still quite alive and well. I think we're on our 3rd or 4th week of it, and it's got a long way to go yet. But we're also starting to get down to harder junk that has to go. Like I found a bunch of old shelves. We found very beat up lawn furniture, stuff that is more of a 1-800-JUNK type of call instead of us going to a trash can. Sooner or later, we're going to bring in 1-800-GOT-JUNK and have them just manually take a load of this stuff. But I'm trying to get rid of as much as I can before that, to recycling, to libraries, and to trash bins. Project T, that is for transcribe. I am still in the first journal of my trip to Europe. It's challenging. It's challenging. Some of it is wonderful. Some of it I just sort of cringe at how young and naive I was. But it is amazing because when I read the journals, those days come back in 3 dimensions to me. So it's an interesting project. And of course, when I finish this, I'm going to toss the journals. I'm going to use the leftover pages in them to use for my to-do lists that I do every day. Why buy new books when I can just use these? And then I'm going to toss them because they're all being transcribed onto a Word file that will go onto my 4 terabyte hard drive, and my son someday can do with them what he wants, but it has been rather wild to reread them. I am stunned at the sheer number of journals I have. However, I had a habit of not filling journals, something that's keeping me very sane right now. Project Cookbook. I am working my way slowly but surely through the recipes that I have on my Remarkable and putting them on index cards and putting them in the kitchen in our little wooden box that holds 4x6 file cards. And this has really been nice. It actually was great this week. I turned around and said, I need this recipe, and then realized I have it in the wooden box in the kitchen. I didn't have to go digging up and then trying to keep my tablet turned on so I could read it. So that was very fun. Of course, the real trick here is every time I use a recipe, I immediately put it on an index card and put it in the card box. And so I'm really saving first the recipes we're using the most. So that's kind of tidy. So that's Project Cookbook and Project T right before it. On the green fingers, I finally finished planting for the fall, I think. I finally put in all of the new sage, lavender, and hyssop. Bad news, the 2 hyssops came in bad shape, and they look like they're dead, frankly, but I did plant them. And that's just a thing to know, that those particular hyssops, you can see a picture of one of them in its better days. It's still somewhat green. And it has its tag next to it because I'm never going to get that subspecies again. I don't know if it was too late in the year. If the company just did a bad job with it, they would replace it. But I'm just going to say no. Meanwhile, I'm also mulching with my leftover tea leaves. And this week, one of my guides said, do you have wooden matches? The kind you strike on a box. I said, yes. They said, put those in the ground with the match head down because that's actually a good source of sulfur and phosphorus and magnesium, and plants like that stuff. So I have all these spare matches. I have a lot of matches. You can only buy them in like 1,000 at a time. So I've just been sticking those babies in the ground around the plants to give them an additional source of food. Let's see if that does anything. The tea leaves do. The tea leaves actually make pretty good mulch. So I've been putting heaps of tea leaves as I accumulate them in a cup for the purpose. And I've been putting them around each plant. So we'll see how that works. We'll see who's going to come back next year. You can see some of the lavenders and the sages sitting in their containers before I planted them in our big planter where I usually store those things. They're all in one place so I can water them easily. And then you can see one of the hyssops that's not making it over in the ground right after I planted it earlier in the week. Meanwhile, the Santa Clarita Valley Free Craft Supplies group did indeed have yet another monthly gathering, and I gave away a big box of rubber stamps. You can see the partially emptied box in the picture there sitting outside the trunk, the closed trunk of my blue Prius. What's really cool about that was a school teacher got them. As Cutiful Christina said from Australia, wait, your teacher's got to pay for this stuff? Yes. His teacher came by, a few people came by. One woman said she wanted them, took two and walked away. She said, if you don't have birthday stamps. And she didn't really look through the box, but this teacher showed up. And I'm really glad because I was going to just walk out. I was going to put them in a trash can and walk away because I thought nobody wants them. A few people went through and took like one and walked away. Teacher walked up, looked at it, and was looking at it very wistfully. There's probably like 120, 150 in there. And I said to her, you could do me a real favor and take that whole box. And she looked up at me with disbelief and said, really? And I said, yeah, why? And she said, I'm a teacher and I want to give them away as incentives to my students for doing good work. And I was like, take the box. Just make sure there's nothing in it that you think is not age appropriate for some reason. She took the box. Meanwhile, the car next to me that you can see with an open trunk, she had yarn in the back. Mostly it was scraps. And then there it was, 660 yards untouched of pure llama that was rated as a sport weight. But frankly, I just think it's kind of a fingering. I think llama just weighs more. What do you want me to tell you? It's more dense. So there it was. So I did take it because I think it'll be a great base yarn to use with all those mini skeins I plan to trade for at the Cognitive Fiber Retreat. So there we are. So I'm looking at it lustfully, and I realized too, this made me realize that I want to crochet a few things with minis before CFR if I get the time. Don't really feel like I have the time to knit anything substantial with them. And I thought, oh, okay. So I went back in and found all these crochet patterns on Ravelry that use up mini skeins. So there we are. On the calendar, Yarnopoly, their meetup will be on Saturday, October 14th, 1 to 4 p.m. A lot of groups have meetings this coming week. It's very exciting. I think Second Saturday Stitchers, which is a knitting group also in the Santa Clarita Valley, they have a meetup, but I haven't traced that. There's a whole bunch of events this week locally. I don't know what it is about next year. There's all these boutiques and markets, but that'll be great. Rhinebeck West at the Knitting Tree, Saturday, October 21st. Let's see, the Cognitive Fiber Retreat, who could forget that, will be on Saturday, November 11th at the Courtyard by Marriott over in Valencia. Thanksgiving, I do have the 4-day weekend from the 23rd to the 26th. Anybody wants to get together, I'm there. The Evolution of Psychotherapy Conference will be in Anaheim at the Convention Center by Disneyland on December 12th through 17th. I should be there at least for the 14th through the 17th. So if you're going to be in Disneyland that weekend and you want to meet up just for a coffee over in downtown Disney, I am your woman, or at one of the hotels, whatever you want. If you're going to Evolution, even better, smidgen. Ooh, did I say someone's name? And don't forget, a lot of continuing ed units available from some really great people. And of course, my Romeo break will be December 23rd through January 1st. I am deeply, deeply looking forward to that. As I say all these things, Minerva is creeping across my desk trying to let me know that she should get the last word. And she will get the last word. She has become my bathtub buddy. She keeps getting in the tub now whenever I turn it on just to watch. But more important than that, she is the source of the logo that I am using on the goodie bags for CFR 2023. So I did put the logo up. I think I put it up already on social media. And I will also put it in the show notes so you can see our very adorable logo. But I decided this year that we needed a new logo. Oh, she's trying to bite me. Hey, you're the logo. You can't bite me. But I decided we needed a new logo. And so we have a very nice just piece of clip art of a black cat because they're really easy to find good clip art of. She's trying to raise heck on my desk. She's going to start kicking things off because she wants me to open the door here. So anyway, Minerva gets the last word. The last word is she is the new mascot of the Cognitive Fiber Retreat. You're not surprised. Of course you're not. Meanwhile, remember, we are a community. When we take care of the community, we are taking care of ourselves, just like when we take care of ourselves, we take for granted that we're taking care of the community. Please, if you're coming to CFR, keep some masks on hand. So far, no rules, but I can't guarantee. We definitely have COVID down here. A lot of people are masked. A lot of people on my caseload, as a psychologist, have COVID right now. I just got my shot. Can't get an RSV yet, still working on that, but I got my flu shot. So those are the warnings, and you know them, but meanwhile, the really important message is everybody please stay safe, take care of each other, and I will talk to you soon. Bye-bye. So we have come to the end of another episode of Cognitive. Please do not use this podcast to diagnose yourself. If you think you are having a mental health problem, please contact a licensed mental health professional. Show notes for these episodes can be found at cognitivepodcast, all one word, .blogspot.com. Episodes can be found at iTunes under the name Cognitive Podcast, but also can be found posted next to the show notes on the Blogspot page. Thank you so much for listening. Everybody, stay safe. Take care of each other, and I'll talk to you soon. Bye-bye.